Okay, I think that we are a go. I'll just start by saying hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this really special virtual panel discussion. My name is Angie Balserini. I'm the Community Engagement Manager for Film Streams. We're a mission-driven nonprofit dedicated to the presentation and discussion of film as an art form. With our 2 cinemas temporarily closed, we've had the opportunity to explore different and creative ways to fulfill our mission and continue offering community programs. So the really great thing about my job is that through our community development program, I get to connect local organizations to our programming, fostering dialogue about important issues in our community. So before our theaters closed in early March, we had planned a collaborative event with local organization IB Black Girl to screen and facilitate discussion around the film Pushout. We knew at the time that this was a crucial conversation. Its urgency is even more apparent today. So tonight we're so grateful to be partnering with IB Black Girl and additionally Glisten Omaha to bring together a conversation about disruptions in the education of Black girls. So please don't hesitate to use this platform to interact. I'll be looking at the comments and directing your questions to any of our experts. Our fantastic moderator for tonight is Ashlei Spivey. She's a bold and transformational leader working to advance equity and justice, both organizational and community systems, and is the founder of IB Black Girl. So thank you, Ashlei, so much for facilitating this conversation. I'm going to go ahead and let you take over and introduce our expert panelists.
Yes, so hi Facebook world. So of course we're in Zoom, so we can't tell how many people are there. Last time I checked, I think we were at 50. So and climbing. So make sure you host a watch party for us and bring more folks into this much needed conversation. As Angie mentioned, I am the founder of IB Black Girl, and it's a collective that centers Black women and girls to access their full potential. And I am super excited to have a dynamic panel of Black women who look beautiful on today that will be talking about and bringing in their experience around the criminalization of Black girls in our schools. So before we get started, just as a reminder, this is a safe and brave space. So please be thoughtful and intentional about the questions that you put into the chat. Please engage with us. And we are going to call in our ancestors to this space to make sure that we are aligned and bring in their power around this conversation. So with that, we are just going to introduce our panel. I'm going to go by who is on my screen. So first, we will start with Shelley. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization and expertise that you are bringing in?
Certainly. Can you all hear me okay? Awesome. I am Shelley Henderson, and while I am native to Omaha, Nebraska, and I live here now, I am the National Executive Director of an organization called A Black Education Network as of just the other month. And I think what is probably more important about me is that I'm a mother and an other mother. So I have 5 beautiful children of my own and 2.5 grandchildren and a whole lot of former students and mentees that still call on me, and godchildren, I forgot about my godbabies, who still call on me for the support that they need, whether it's where they work, where they play, or where they go to school.
Thank you, Shelley, for that introduction. Next, we have Dr. V.
Hi, thank you all for having me here. My name is Dr. Venus Evans Winters. I am a professor at a university in Illinois. I am also a clinical psychotherapist and certified clinical trauma professional in private practice. And as you all know, I did have an appearance in the film, so I'm just here to represent that perspective of the filmmakers as well as the book and the girls that were part of the film. And I'm also happily able to announce that I'm also a board member of ABEN, the Association of Black Educators Network.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining us. I feel honored that you were able to bring in your expertise, especially being featured in the film, so thank you. Next, we have Monica.
Hello, everyone. Excited to be here tonight. My name is Monica Wells, and I am the proud counselor of the Mighty Meerkats here at Nelson Mandela Elementary here in Omaha, Nebraska. I am a native North Omaha girl, and I'll say it loud and proud for the rest of my life. Have been in education for over 16 years, just recently acquired my master's in educational leadership. And so I think just like Shelley, one of the proudest things about me is my daughter, Layla, who is my everything, who is my life, who shares the same birthday as Miss Chantel, who you'll meet in just a little bit. So another reason why it's very special to me. But just excited to be here today to represent educators and represent all Black girls all across the globe. And my mission is always to inspire others to be happy and believe in their self and believe in their full potential. So excited to have this conversation tonight. So hello, everyone.
Yes, I'm excited. Y'all gonna make me break out the pictures of my son and go get them while y'all talking. Have them all on the screen. Okay. Next we have Chantel.
Thank you. It's hard to follow up my good friend Monica, but I can check off one of my weekly bucket list items to rock out with my circle of women. So Monica is amazing, but it's good to join everybody tonight. My name is Chantel Mallory. I am a practicing attorney here in Nebraska, and I am also the Chief Professional Development Officer and General Counsel for a wonderful 100-year-old organization called OHB, Omaha Home for Boys. We provide a lot of much needed services for youth and young adults and their families in our community. My primary practice area has been in juvenile and family law, so I know this topic oh so well on the more unfortunate side of it. And so I'm just happy to be here to share what I've learned and the reason for my purpose and passion work tonight.
Thank you. So as I said, I checked our Facebook. We're climbing up. We have close to 100 folks watching now. So I'm excited to be able to share your expertise in catalytic leadership with our viewers. So let's start out with Dr. V. You were featured in the film, and so I would really like to get your perspective and grounding on why a film like this is needed and what was it like being able to participate in this kind of project.
I'll start off with the easy question. So what was it like to participate in this project? This was a project that was really girl-centered. And if you're familiar with the work of Dr. Monique Morris, she has 2 great books, which I posted on our Facebook page in the announcement, the 2 recommended reading books. But she is a girl-centered scholar, a Black woman, who what she does is something not so traditional in research. Instead of centering the perspectives, the experiences, or the data and statistics specifically from the researcher's perspective, she actually centers the girls' stories. She also does a wonderful job of looking at the adults in the organizations that have been successful at helping Black girls achieve and also respecting their agency and their voice and their collective knowledge. So that's what it was like. So imagine a space like that where it just say, come through, Black girl. So you bring all of yourself. And so Ash, now that's the positive side of the project. The not so positive part of the project is a part of the larger Black Lives Matter movement, and of course the movement for Say Her Name. We have a lot of girls who are being pushed out of schools, and it's what Dr. Monique Morris refers to as the criminalization or the pathway to criminalization, which is something we're starting to understand a lot about, because traditionally, as our Esquire, our attorney said, a lot of the focus tends to be on boys. We're just now starting to see a lot about Black girls. And as you all can imagine, as Black women, we always thought, oh, we're doing well. But then we have to think, compared to who? We're doing well compared to who? And so I've always said that a lot of the kids, the girls especially, are the ones that are being left behind in these classrooms when boys are sent into jails and prisons. But then we woke up and we found out that Black girls were being physically assaulted in schools and emotionally abused in schools, not to mention some spirit skill that all of us could speak to. So a lot of this film is about the criminalization or pathways to criminalization for Black girls, which is a different framing of how we, work with Black girls in our K-12 systems.
Thank you for that. So in that same vein, Shelley, I want you to kind of give some insight to why do you think Black girls are left out of that conversation? Like, why is there that gap or that narrative missing when we are a part in such an integral part of community?
You know, I don't think there's an easy answer to that question, but one of the things that I can say when I asked educators who are also left out of the conversation, you know, they're like Dr. V said, is kind of this pathway to criminalization that looks like essentializing Black girls as one thing. You know, they are, and that one thing is perpetuated. They're all the same and they're all not good. And so I think that, you know, part of that, number one, is that we don't have the collective will on the ground in our local community and beyond to really look at what Black girls might need and ask them what they need. Number one. I think number two, it has to do with, I don't know how to call this, the popularization, I just made up a word, of the movement. And so what is on the news, in the media, sexy, hot, and poppin' is what gets the conversation. So in 2014, when Barack Obama made this bold call from the White House after saying, you know, his own son could have looked like the child that he wanted to wrap his arms around, there was a lot of action. People mobilized, people jumped into action. And it wasn't that, like, we're not talking about oppression Olympics. I don't think any of us would say that boys who need what they need shouldn't get what they need. It's just that it was completely absent of a conversation about what our girls need, particularly from the perspectives of those girls. Not the politicians, not the funders, not the educators, not the system folks, not the media, but what girls say they need.
Thank you for that. So I kind of want to continue through that vein. And Chantel, if you could jump in on this question. So how do you think the criminalization of Black girls fits into now this more prominent conversation around racial justice? There has been conversation around the murders of some Black men that have been viral and very prominent in the news, but then there's also been critiques about Black trans women and Black women that have also been murdered that have been absent. And so to kind of tag on to Shelley's point, like where do you see us fitting into this national conversation or this now national call around racial justice?
That's a great question. I think the biggest problem is I don't see us fitting in. So I'm one of those CNN news pretty much all day, flipping back and forth between news stations. And I will absolutely stand by this comment that we are not shown enough in this light, in this movement, in this struggle. There is not enough talk about Breonna Taylor. There wasn't enough talk about Sandra Bland. There are not any. If it wasn't for social media and friends and family who are aware of these issues, I don't think that any of us would know about any of the trans women who have been murdered. I mean, we just are not receiving this news. And it was said earlier, you know, some things just aren't sexy. Some things just aren't the popular thing to talk about. But it is imperative. We are mothers. You know, everybody was talking earlier about their children, and I didn't bring mine up, but I am a mother of 2 boys, but I'm also a godmother and a TT to a lot of kids. I represent a lot of young women in juvenile court. I represent a lot of families that have mothers who have been in the system before. They've become a mother in the system. They were a child in the system. So I think that the violent acts, the trauma that we go through, the things that we are experiencing, and the ways that we are being attacked as a result of the racial violence that's going on in this country, those stories are not shared enough. We need a booster seat for that. We need a ladder for that. We need a banner. We need a flag. We need the blimp to fly over the top of this city and say Black girls matter, because that narrative is not out there. So I think that's huge. And I think if anybody who is watching this takes one thing away from this today, it would be to promote those issues as they affect Black girls and Black women in this racial justice movement.
Y'all got me excited. I'm like trying to stay on script. I got all these questions going in my head. The facilitator in me is like, yes, let's dive in. But before I get back on script, just one comment, Chantel, that really resonated with me. And what I've noticed is that like there are these extreme acts of violence that people then want to engage in around racial and gender justice versus, like you said, it's an everyday experience that there's violence against girls and women. And so I appreciate you raising that point that like people got to engage in this every day. Like it's not just these very extreme physical acts that cause harm against us and our community. Kind of going back and thinking about then the film, Monica, I want to get your point of view because you're in the schools day to day, right? Serving kids. Monica's actually the counselor at my son's school, and she does an amazing job. He loves her. I'm hoping he don't come down and bust on this video because he hears me saying your name. But one of the themes that was discussed in the film was adultification. And why do you think that Black girls lose their innocence and are in this space of being seen as adults way sooner than what they are? It seems like it's either one or the other. Either you're a kid or you're an adult. There's no in between. And so can you maybe kind of talk about what you have seen given your experience or even that theme throughout the film?
I think that a lot of times we don't meet them where they're at. They're not seen. A lot of our children need to be seen as who they are and where they are at, and then they need to be mentored, and they need to be, allowed to be creative and their jovial selves and just grow as they are. I think a lot of times through media, through things that go on, people put this image on our children, and they don't see them for who they are. They're not seen. They don't look and see, what's going on and who they are and who they're trying to be. These babies have some brilliant minds. They have a lot to offer this world. And it is up to us to build those relationships with them, with their families, and make sure that they are okay with being who they are. They're confident in being who they are in the space that they are in, and that we don't try to create or put an image on them that's not that's not who they are. And so I think that that's a lot of the issue. I think that's a lot of the problem.
Thank you. To the folks that are watching, we're a little over 100 people. We're about to open it up for Q&A. So if you put in the Facebook chat your questions, Angie, our liaison to the tech world, will get us those questions so we can make sure that your voice and your thoughts are uplifted to our brilliant panelists as well. So I want to open up this question to anyone. Just unmute yourself and let me know who would like to answer it. Kind of tagging on to what Monica was saying, how do you develop and pull out then the potential of Black girls? So kind of what I've been thinking about it and thinking about this film, like we have Ivy Black Girl and we focus on Black women and girls. And it seems to be that kind of the path is that we teach Black girls what it means to be a Black woman, and like we don't give them necessarily choice and agency, to your point, Dr. V. Like we're not allowing young people to be brilliant and to co-create and to have their own ideas. And so how do you think we really unlock the potential and the leadership of the girls? And I'm thinking about the film, and there was some just brilliant young people, and I was like, man, I wish I had that when I was that age, or people were pulling that out of me. And so what do you think that would look like if we really invested in Black girls in that way? And again, whoever wants to answer it, just unmute and go ahead and dive in.
I want to start. I want to say, guys, I'm very passionate about that. I believe in, just seeing them for who they are, allowing them to be creative, allowing them to be themselves, building that relationship, having dialogue. Mentorship is huge, 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 huge. So sitting in that space with them and saying, well, who are you? What do you like? What kind of things do excite you? What kind of things scare you? What are your fears? What are some things that you're hopeful for? Sometimes I feel like we don't even sit down and have those conversations a lot of times with our girls, telling them that they're beautiful, teaching them what confidence is, what it looks like, what it smells like, how you walk into that. So I would say, that mentorship and spending that time and just allowing them to be authentically who they are and just being with them on the way. But a lot of it is letting them see, us and mentoring and definitely nurturing what's inside of them.
I want to
Thank
pick
you.
up there because I think it's important. Something that Monica talked about, mentoring, sometimes it has the connotation. I'm not disagreeing at all. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Sometimes people think too hard about mentoring, is what I wanted to point out. Sometimes people think there has to be this super formalized relationship and permission slips and all these things. Sometimes it's just going up to the little girl that you see somewhere and saying, "Hey, beautiful, you look so gorgeous today. I love your Afro puffs. I love this," or "That was brilliant what you just said. That was an amazing point." Just affirming them is huge, and letting them have the exposure of being around women so that they can see where they could be. Earlier today, I was having a discussion with some of my other colleagues in the DEIJ arena, and we were talking about representation and the pipeline, and how the pipeline for Black girls and Black women starts way too late. So a lot of times it's, "Oh, well, I want to practice law, so can I come and shadow you? But I'm already in law school, or I'm in college." That type of exposure to career, to innovation, to entrepreneurship, to whatever a girl wants to be, needs to start so much earlier than it does. And it needs to start in informal ways. It needs to contain representation where they can come up to you and touch your hair and play with your necklace and see what's inside your briefcase and learn things and ask questions about you. And the way you learn how to be a Black woman is from another Black woman. So that representation and that exposure is huge. When I was growing up, I was a first generation college bound student. I didn't have any other attorneys in my household or in my family. So my idol was Claire Huxtable, the character, because she represented what I wanted to be. I wanted to be exactly what she was. So I think that representation, not only in the media, but just that tangible time that we spend and the ways that we pour into Black girls, and then the ways that we create the pipeline much, much earlier, are very important.
So then Shelley and Dr. V, I want you to kind of chime on this to piggyback on what Monica and Chantel had said. So a woman in the film quoted, "Resilience is our gift and our curse." And that really resonated with me. And so thinking about this idea of being in your truth and stepping into your power, how does that statement resonate with you all? And how does it relate to this larger conversation?
So I had 4 thoughts about the last question, and that's actually thought number 2. So what I am found telling Black girls, whether they're little Black girls or Black girls that are in their 30s, are these 4 things. All of that verve, and Chris Emden this morning, when I got to interview him, called it the sauce. Like all of that verve and all of that sauce is everything. It's everything. And don't lean into it. Don't be afraid of it. Don't let nobody tell you what to do with it. And for our girls that don't feel like they have that verve or that sauce, don't even worry about it. Don't let nobody put that label on you either. All right, so leverage that thing. That thing is what people are afraid of. They can't do that. They don't understand that, and so don't silence that. Thing number 2 is when society has its foot on your neck, don't let nobody tell you to get a stronger neck. Just no. We are told that we are strong and we can handle it, we can do it, we can make it, we can bake it, we can solve it, we can fix it, and we tired. So it's not about getting a stronger neck, it's about taking care of yourself and then creating systemic change where you can, if you can. Number 3, I tell girls to take a job or make a job doing whatever you dream up. And if there's a way that I can help get you there, let's do it. Let's learn about it. Let's get a credential. Let's figure it out. And then last but not least, I tell them, don't hate the player, hate the game. So don't dare turn a side eye, a knife or whatever to your sisters. Think about what it is, this divide and conquer stuff that I see going on. Think about what that is and understand what that is and say, no, I'm not going to be that way with my sister. My sister is my sister. Not all skin folk or you kin folk. However, we're not going to turn weapons on our sisters. We're going to hate the game, not the players, or hate, you know what I'm saying. That's it.
Thank you. Dr. V, did you have anything to add to that and this idea around resiliency?
Yes, I mean, like I said, a lot of my work looks at Black women and Black girls across the diaspora and across the lifespan. I am interested in resilience and collective knowledge, collective wisdom, collective consciousness around race, class, and gender. And so I think our starting point should be that Black girls aren't broken. Black girls aren't broken. What a lot of people are doing is we start from the perspective that something must be wrong with Black girls. And when that's your starting point, we're going to put all of our energies and resources into trying to fix what's broken. But if you think about it, whether you're in education, social work, or sociology, even in legal fields, right? Because I have to write these court reports. We start when we enter into grad school, undergrad, our clinical practices, our internships. Our starting point is in our reading says Black people are deficient, Black people are pathological, and Black people are broken. So that's some of our framework. And that's why we're shifting it to say Black lives matter. All Black lives matter. So what we need to focus on is fixing the systems. And we need to stand up and support our girls when they are resisting. Because resisting might look like your head down on the desk. Resisting might look like a pink and purple fro. Now, if your name was Becky, and I don't know any Beckys. Now, I know some damn Karens. I run into them every now and again at the grocery store. But if your name was Becky and you were in class and you came to school with purple hair, green hair, or pink hair, they'll say she's going through a phase. You see what I'm saying? But our children aren't allowed to even resist adult culture. They're criminalized for resisting. They're criminalized, for simply being adolescents. So that's one thing. We have a broken system and we need to acknowledge that. Our children aren't broken. But second, our kids are trying to survive under a white supremacist curriculum, pedagogies or practices, how we teach, everything from the time they walk into the door. You see what I'm saying? And so we need to be thinking about as a collective, because now Black women, collective wisdom is why it's so important, that collective consciousness. But how do we now fix those broken systems? I like when Dr. Monique Morris, she talks about, one, building up Black girl leadership. Help our Black girls become leaders in their own spaces. That's at home, in the neighborhood, at school, right? So we help them facilitate their leadership skills, put them in positions of leadership. Because many of us at home, we were. But when we got back to school, we were told to be subservient, sit down, sit still, and keep your head looking straight forward and don't question. Those were some of the things we could easily get in trouble for. What did your mama say? Have you lost your mind? Well, clearly she knew your brain wasn't going to fall out your head. She was telling you to think critically. Have you lost your God-given sense? Is that not agency and resilience telling you that you're born with brilliance? You see what I'm saying? So we also need an African-centered curriculum. Now, some people get scared because they're saying, I'm not African, I'm Black. Well, the truth is your DNA has survived longer on the continent of Africa than it did in the US. I'm not trying to say that we're not a multicultural people. We are. Black people don't need multicultural education. White people need multicultural education. We need Black education. We need African education. Two different agendas, two different frameworks. And lastly, Ash, I would say too, because you run a girls program, right, with young women, young girls, what we need to be talking about too is rites of passage programs. These are girls. We are supposed to be helping them find their path to the next stage and next phase of life. Naeem Akbar talks about we go from being the unborn, right, to being a child, to being a girl, to being a woman, to becoming an elder, to becoming an ancestor. Now, I ain't the one to tell it, but some of us don't even know how to become elders. That's why we don't know when to sit our asses down. We need our programs while we're trying to out there fix the girls, telling them what to do with their hair, nails, and pants. We don't have that. We know that. So research shows that Black women are the largest group of people who are reporting loneliness. We know that that is also linked to diabetes, obesity, and heart disease, cardiovascular disease. We're dying of loneliness. Where is loneliness taught? When they segregate our girls in schools. They're overplacing them in special ed, they're putting them in in-school suspension, detention, and then they're suspending them and expelling them from school. So where are Black girls learning to adapt to being lonely? So our systems are sick and pathological. So what we need is rites of passage programs that are African-centered and that facilitate the girls' leadership and agency.
Thank you. Y'all, this panel is everything. This is everything I needed this week. And it's only Tuesday, okay? So before I get into the questions from our Facebook followers and folks that are joining us tonight, I have one more question that kind of really stuck with me as I was thinking about this idea, and they brought up in the film. Is the issue then over punishment of our girls, or the idea of punishment in general? Like, are we not taking a restorative lens and practice to how we support or redirect girls? Or to your point, Dr. V, are they already criminalized and working from a place of deficiency? So again, open it up to anyone that would like to start out. Is it over punishment, or the idea of punishment in general being the issue?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that rehabilitation of any type of behavioral issue is the latter thought, unfortunately. So the overcriminalization stuff starts early. The overpunishment starts early. You see the white girl get, you know, the talk, the hand on the shoulder, the redirection. You see the Black girl get sent out of class. Then all of that anger and those issues build up. And sometimes, you know, she was talking about earlier what we have as Black women, you know, that sass pops out, and that sass is treated a different way from her than it is from the white girl. And then you fast forward some and they get a little bit older and they're over criminalized in other ways. So I think part of it is just where it stems from and the lack of caring, understanding, loving, training, teaching. All of those things don't come into play when it's the Black girl because she's feared. So it's, we need to hurry up. We need to break her of this. We need to send her out. That's time that kids are spending outside of the classroom. We all know what happens when you miss classroom instruction time and then try to get redeposited back into the classroom atmosphere. So there's a bunch of that happens, and you're developing all of these different, you know, they talked in the movie about the ACEs, and you're developing all of these different risk factors that are associated, I will say, with racism, not with race. There's nothing inherently wrong about her being a Black girl. There's something wrong with the way that she is treated, with the racism. But when you have those interventions, and those interventions are punitive early on, and now the SRO is getting called in, the student resource officer, the police officer that's at the school is getting called in. And now these things are happening, and suspension and expulsion. And it compounds until I see that child in court, or until I see that adult female in court. And by then it's way too late to go back and say, well, we're going to rehabilitate now. You should have been rehabilitating her when she was younger. You should have been teaching, nurturing, working with her at that point instead of punishing.
I would agree with that 100%. And I also, I mean, it's the idea of instructional discipline versus punitive. And a lot of times people want something that stings all the time. You know, like you spoke about before, you see the young lady with the head down on the desk and automatically she's not doing the work and you want to send her out or you want to punish her. But you don't know that did you ask a question? Did she eat this morning? Is she being penetrated by her uncle at home? We have to have these conversations.
Or maybe she's just resting because schools are assaultive.
Exactly.
Assaultive. I mean, I think this is sometimes we forget because we forget the systems are broken.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, imagine this. We're Facebook Live. We love our jobs. We love our insurance, guys, okay? But anyway, so now that we got that disclaimer aside, now keep in mind that all of us at some point, we did not feel like going to work. We that our workplace was not reflective of our home environment or our culture. Sometimes we walk in there, we're fatigued before we even leave the door. So yes, she may put her head down on the desk because
Exactly.
she's tired of hearing about what Christopher Columbus did for her. And she's
Exactly.
not learning about Fannie Lou Hamer, but her auntie Chantel just told her who Fannie Lou Hamer was. So why in the hell is she studying some white man or white woman that doesn't look like her?
But until you build that relationship, until you take the time to have those conversations.
Yeah, and then they don't even see people who look like them.
Right.
I mean, they at any given, they don't even look like them. They don't hear them in their speech. Do you know how much labor it takes to even translate dialects, let alone languages? Because that's what's culturally familiar to us. So I can relax.
Right.
And so I think that before we can even get to criminalization, before we can even get to punishment, I have a serious question to ask you all, Ash and Shelley. Think about this. And I'm serious. And I know, see, here's the thing when y'all bring in an outsider. I can say some things, right? So y'all can—
Not an outsider, not an outsider.
Y'all can do like we do in Africa and click the T.
Not an outsider.
Remember in the film I did that? Because sometimes you don't have to always speak. You don't have to speak, right? So keep this in mind. Do you even trust the people who are making the judgment about that girl?
Right.
Yeah, that is really related to everything I've been thinking. I think in terms of school discipline, we are conflating that with policing, just plain old policing. And there's so much subjectivity in why a child is disciplined. She had an attitude. What does that mean?
What does that mean?
Insubordination. What intimidation? You 6 feet tall. Intimidation. I mean, what could she possibly have done with that pencil?
Exactly.
So I think we're conflating the two. I think, there's a lot of debate. I know what happened in Minneapolis with the start toward removing police officers from the schools. I think that because I've worked with 200 teachers now with the Omaha Public Schools on intersectionality, where it pertains to gendered and racism in their classrooms, they're such blank slates. They know their content, they care, but when caring is not enough, then what?
Yep.
And there's also, just to kind of plug a resource for people to use here in Nebraska. I'm on the board of the ACLU, and we released a report about the harm that school resource officers cause within schools, how it further criminalizes Black and brown kids, and really the idea around why they started and how that totally changed and added to the school to prison pipeline. So just as our viewers are wanting another resource, there is a report and study with some recommendations around policy that we have put out. Right. So let me get y'all, listen, I was like, okay, we're gonna have a quick minute of me asking questions, and I really want to keep going, but I do want to respect our Facebook followers and people that are engaging with us. So let me go to these here questions. Okay, so Dahlia Lloyd said, oftentimes these conversations leave out toddlers and preschoolers. However, they are also suspended at an unbelievable rate. How do we bring forward and highlight these things that are happening to our youngest children too? And again, anyone that would like to take that, please.
So I can start. So the educators that I've worked with the Omaha Public Schools range from, and I call them educators because they range from pre-K to, training teachers from district administration. They range from, the para, the secretary, library, school psychologists, they're educators. And one of the things that I've noticed about, what they're saying in terms of our littlest ones is that, number one, they don't know what to do with some of the energy that they feel coming back at them. And it's easier for them to get these children to comply to their comfort and what they deem as normal behavior for a child. And even in those trainings, when I'm talking to them, they start emoting. All they hear is blame, shame, guilt, and grievance. You're saying I can't do it and that I don't understand. And I'm like, well, I kind of have to show you a mirror of yourself before I get you to challenge some of the things that you're doing in the classroom. Like, that is why we're here. The other thing that I also see happening, and we've talked about it so much, is the adultification of our young girls from the time they are toddling. around. Some of our girls from very, very young ages are sexualized. Some of our girls are treated like miniature angry Black women. And they barely putting 2 or 3 words together, but yet they're treated like miniature Black women. And some of the things that they are trying to address often end up being escalated. So thing A happens, I didn't know what to do, so I jumped there and did what I thought. Well, now little sis is like, what? And when she responds that way, it just escalates into something else. And so those are some of the things that I'm seeing with some of our early educators.
Thank you. So Keisha Partridge said, how does the panel feel about the statement that we raise our daughters and love and protect our sons?
I guess I'll jump in on that one because I am a mother of sons, and I try to do a balance of both raising them and loving and protecting them. I do feel that being an oldest child, an only girl for quite a while until my mom got remarried and I got stepsisters, a lot of the responsibility in the family does fall on the girl. You do grow up a lot quicker than some of the boys do. And I'm not saying that's every family's reality, but a lot of times for a Black woman, a Black girl, I think that that is part of what is communicated to us so that we can be able to stand on our own regardless of what happens in our lives. The unfortunate reality is a lot of times we can't depend on anybody to love and protect us and sometimes even raise us except for us. So I do feel like there's some truth to what Keisha is talking about. And I think it's incumbent upon us as parents, as the village, to wrap around our boys and our girls in a protective and loving way, as well as a way that raises them and trains them and teaches them and nurtures them and builds them.
Sorry, I was muted. Does anybody else want to jump in on that question before I move to the next from our watchers, our viewers? Okay. So Melanie Miller Slogger asks, does the educational method and structure in our country hinder the ability for adults to mentor? Does the educational method and structure in our country hinder the ability for adults to mentor?
I'll jump in. I think in some ways, I think like Chantel said before, the ideal of mentorship, sometimes people think it's, you got to come in, you got to fill out a form and it's got to be this structure to it. If we go against looking at it like that and looking at it as, getting out and building these relationships and working with our students one-on-one without all of, just coming in and having lunch with a scholar, taking one of our scholars out and showing them what you're doing. There's so many different ways that you can mentor. Mentor doesn't have to be, looking at a structural way, like Chantel was talking about earlier. So if you're looking at it that way, I think a lot of times people do feel like that. But I think we have to change the way that we look at mentoring and what mentorship looks like.
Ash, can I throw the question back out?
Absolutely.
Why do they believe youth need mentors? Mentors. I'm just curious.
I feel like you have somewhere that you want to take this. I like that. We can facilitate together. I'm liking the energy that you're giving me, Dr. V. Yes.
She's making me
tell me what you're thinking. So when you repurpose that question and reframed it for us, where are you trying to get us to see? Like what aren't we seeing?
Yeah, and I'll let hopefully we all can jump in on it, because I think again it's a framing. It's starting from a place of deficit and pathology. The assumption is the kids need to be mentored. Now, what's interesting, Ash, is that the research shows that formal mentoring actually don't work for most students, but it definitely doesn't work for most Black girls and other girls of color. The reason why it doesn't work is because Chantel just gave a lived experience, right? Shelley just talked about her work with teachers. And so think about this. The way that we operate is the way that, okay, and I'm about to put our business on the street. The way that we opened up, girl, you look good. Girl, oh my God, y'all look bright. So right? What we do with our mentoring is really based off, first of all, very patriarchal, patrilineal perspective. It comes out of the business field. You're young, I'm older, you're new, I'm good at this, I'm successful, you want to be successful, do exactly what I did. Now I'm going to hurt some feelings out there. But guess who did that first? White women. And before you know it, these white feminists, they were wearing pantsuits and looking just like men, acting just like men, and treating Black women just like men treat them. So it's very hierarchical. So what our girls really need, again, it's going back to an African-centered perspective, they need muses. And I think that's what Dr. Morris is trying to portray in the film. Muses are women who happen to be older. Now, keep in mind that most of us come from communities where we have play sisters, or that's my big sister, or that's my play mama. That's what, y'all can tell I got the 14-year-old, right? That's right? And they're doing this. So guess what? That was intuitive to us, culturally intuitive. That's something spiritual. That here we are 5 and the girl that's leading us 6. And then when you look back, remember your play mama was only 12 and you were 9.
Absolutely.
But those relationships, they work, right? They work and so what happens is when you bring this outsider in who's going to tell me what's wrong with me, and if I just walk this way, if I just speak this way, then I'll be accepted. That's a lie. You got some of the coldest chicks around this table right now. We can't even stand going to work. Some of us then quit our jobs. Like, I'm not taking this. It's like shadow boxing. So what happens in these non-hierarchical musing relationships is the girls tell us, how was your day? What went right today? What went wrong today? But guess what? I'm going to tell my little sis too. Let me tell you what I did wrong. Now let me tell you how I fixed it when it went wrong. As opposed to I'm all perfect. Because it's just like Shelley said, you need that swag. That's what's going to survive when you don't feel like walking into that courtroom another day. That's what's gonna happen when you're the only Black teacher. Mm-hmm. So who we asking the mentor? Because you know what? Y'all got a problem. Y'all got a problem in Omaha. Y'all demographics are reflective of the U.S. populations for African Americans.
Absolutely.
Yeah, y'all number 1 in poverty? That doesn't even make sense. I could barely pronounce Omaha because I don't know where the fuck I didn't even know Black people live there.
Hey, listen.
I find out.
Listen.
Shelley, I know you did. But now I know it's reflective of U.S. demographics. So what does that say about white racial propaganda? What do you think that's doing to the psyche of the kids? So who's going to mentor them when y'all need to be not tearing down, when you all need to be having conversations with your government officials, your school officials, with people who are in charge of employment, your police officers? We want to defund the police and we don't want them in our schools in no shape or form.
So piggyback on that then. So part of some of the solutions that were presented, I think, in the film, but also just in general, are getting more Black teachers in schools. I think it's nationally 7% of teachers are African American. And so Shelley, thinking about your work, specifically working with educators, what ABIN does and stand for, and then kind of this other new perspective that Dr. V is challenging us with, is the answer then, is there an immediate kind of Band-Aid answer of we need to get more Black teachers in, we need to think about curriculum, or do we need to re-envision what we mean by educating our Black girls?
It's not a zero-sum game, like both and all of the above. And, and not necessarily staying in our lane, but identifying like which among us, which sister is going to knock down that disproportionate minority contact stuff. I ain't doing that. I could, but why? Thinking about what that recruitment of Black teachers should look like. The higher ed institutions are not going to do it. In fact, legislation here says that they can't really say that out loud. The Ward Connolly stuff that went through here, they can't really say that out loud. So we're expecting them to, this funnel, the Black teachers are just going to pour in and poop out. No, it's our responsibility as a community to make that happen. So which community organization will stand up and do that? There are some of us that need to get in that policy making circle, figure out what pieces of legislation harm Black girls, which ones need to be put in place because they will help to support Black girls. And so Ash and I, thank you for inviting me. We had this session about Black-led social change. And again, we really kind of identify, you know, if your lane is narrative building and you using technology and various forums, not only to call out the lies, let's start there, call out the lies, but then number two, replace them with the stories of our lived experiences. Some of us need to do that. So get in where you fit in. It's not a zero-sum game. We can't do one thing at the sacrifice of another.
So listen, we are almost at time, and I have so many more questions. Like literally, this has been the highlight of my day. I love talking about this work and how we can really engage, and especially with dynamic Black women, like this is everything. But we have to get ready to wrap up our time. So I want to kind of leave us with each of you going through and maybe talking about what you see as an opportunity or solution to this conversation, thinking about all the different themes that we talked about, whether it was criminalization, whether it was a curriculum, like all things. What do you want to leave our viewers with and each other with as we think about how do we really dig into this work to have outsized impact for our Black girls? So I'm going to reverse and start at the bottom of my screen and start with Chantel.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to engage in the dialogue. And after the last couple of weeks that we have all had as a country, and specifically as Black women, this is a welcome conversation. And so my bucket is running low at this point, and I needed these drops. So thank you all, and thank you to my co-panelists, and thank you, Ashley, and thank you, IB Black Girl, and thank you, Film Streams, for the opportunity. I think my final takeaway for an opportunity would be that I think we have to look beyond just whatever is happening at that time, at that one point in time that is causing an educator or whomever, someone in the criminal justice system, to have that interaction with that Black girl, and just look down the road a little ways. Just think with your mind's eye, this interaction, this one point in time, what is that going to mean for that child tomorrow, later today, in the next period, at lunch, at recess, when she's 15, when she's 25, when she's 50. Those little things are damaging. There was a girl who was in the film who caused me to cry. And it was the little girl who thought that she wanted to jump off the bridge into the traffic below her. And you could just see in her face how broken she was by the treatment that she was receiving by that person who was entrusted every day to take care of that child and to pour into that child. And she drained that child completely. Those interactions, taking the time to think about what that does to that Black girl, that Black woman in the future, I think that's the one thing that I would send out to any educator or any criminal justice professional that's watching.
Thank you, Chantel. We appreciate your insight and your expertise. Absolutely. Monica.
I would definitely say that next panel that you have, invite. I love this conversation. I love being with all of you wonderful women tonight. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Anytime that there is a platform that we can talk about what we can do to strengthen our young Black girls, I'm all for it. So thank you, Ashley. Thank you, IB Black Girl. Thank you, Film Streams. Very excited to be here tonight. My final thought is, love our babies. Love them. See them. Don't look past them. Don't try to put labels on our kids. See them, love them. And, just nurture that creativity that's within them and keep having these conversations so that others can learn as well.
Thank you, Monica. I appreciate your expertise and what you are bringing to the conversation. Okay, Dr. V.
Yes, I'm going to follow suit with Chantel and Monica. Thank you for having me as a guest here. And I just want to also, on behalf of the Pushout Productions film crew, I can't remember the official name, but thank you all for, having a watch party and also centering Black girls, especially now during this time in our nation's history, where it's actually Black young women who are leading the movement, along with Black men, but definitely a lot of Black girl leadership, young Black women's leadership. So with that said, I do want to remind everybody to get the Pushout book, and also Sing a Rhythm, something blues. I can't remember the new book by Dr. Morris, but also look that up as well. And I put it on the Facebook page. So one thing is recommended reading. So one thing I do want to say, because at the end of the day, I am a clinician, a practitioner, but even as a professor of policy and research, something that we know for sure is that usually when you're looking at demographics or statistics, we try to generalize. That's dangerous for Black people, by the way. But what I will say is this: I'm going to challenge you all. I'm especially going to challenge, a Ben, but I'm also going to challenge IB Black girls. Because guess what? From a statistical and policy perspective, when you see numbers like Black people are 14 or 13% of a particular state population like Omaha, trust me, if it plays in Omaha, it will play across the nation. So I'm just going to challenge you all to just hit this Black girl school push-out problem quickly and unapologetically, because you all actually, because of the small size, but the demographics are reflective of a larger U.S., African Americans and the general population, you all can actually be an example for the rest of the country. And that's no pressure. And so Dr. Monique Morris, she talks about reimagining schools as healing spaces, as places to heal, right? And so when we look at the unemployment rates, when we look at the housing problem in education, when we look at the school push-out problems in Nebraska, of course you're going to have young people who are impacted and inflicted. That's starting in pre-K, as that person asked. That's starting as early as pre-K. That started before birth because that mother did not have access to adequate health care. You see what I'm saying? So where are these stereotypes coming from? So we need to all hold the teachers of Omaha accountable. Of course, they're going to try to blame the parents, right? But when are they going to be accountable? And also, Dr. Monique Morris talks about schools as counter spaces. And IB Black girl, you're that. So what that means is, imagine this, y'all. This is shameful, right, Monica? Right, Chantel? When they sent our kids home, we were kind of happy. We were actually happy. What does that say? Black people was like, oh yeah. Okay, now I do have a makeshift office right here because my son came back and I was using his room as my yoga room and office, but we were happy. Imagine that, because we had some idea of the emotional, not just the intellectual, but the emotional assault that was happening in schools, and we were just coping, right? So the pandemic offered us space to just think, to breathe, and to be with our children again. So what does that mean? And from the perspective of IB Black girl, how can that be a counter space to do what the schools aren't capable of doing? It's white supremacist curriculum, it's white supremacist ways of interacting with people, it's white supremacist ways of talking and interacting with children and relationships. So I'll just leave it there. Healing spaces and reimagining schools, especially going forward.
Thank you, Dr. V. We are super excited to have you here. We always love to bring in, dynamic Black women from outside of our market. We have a ton here, as you can see with the folks on the panel. But again, that outside perspective and your point of view is absolutely appreciated and valued. And I appreciate the challenge. So thank you for that. Thank you. Shelley.
So I'll try to be brief, following suit. Thanks to the organizers and thanks to our guests. Y'all can't quit me, never. Y'all can't quit me, never. The one thing that I would leave you, well, I would say ditto and ashe to everything that you all have said. But the other thing that I feel like needs to be said is that we can't decide which Black girls are worth saving and educating. And so one of the things that I tell my educators all the time is when we're talking about our girls who are pregnant and parenting, it's not over, it's not too late. When we're talking about the LGBTQ plus community, so our girls, our femmes, our you know, all of our girls, just because we may not understand them does not mean that they are not worth educating and saving. Our teachers talk a lot about girls who have been sexually assaulted, but I bring them into conversations about girls who are sex positive and girls who might be sex working. And just because you don't understand it and they don't vibe with the spirit in the inside of you, don't mean that they're not worth educating and saving. And our students who have disabilities and are gifted, just because you don't know what to do with her because she knows everything that you're supposed to teach her before she got there, that doesn't mean she's not worth your time. And then last but not least, our system involved youth. So students who are in juvenile justice because they did something, but they need a second chance. And our students who are system involved because their families experience something and they're just like, hmm. So stop deciding which Black girls need saving, use an intersectional approach, and bring your full self to this work.
Thank you, Shelley. You know, I appreciate you. So Shelley was actually one of the original advisory leadership members for Ivy Black Girl and helped launch this work. So, you know, I love you, Boots. So I just want to end it with thanking all of the panelists again. It's been, I think in general, doing this work, right? Like it's the grind, you're in it day to day. It feels a little bit heavier now and compounded because of the pandemic, because of the larger racial justice conversations that we may or may not be a part of. And so I needed this tonight more than I thought. So I thank you all for giving yourselves and your energy to this conversation. To our listeners and viewers that tuned in, I hope that you heard these folks tonight, these dynamic, catalytic Black women that are doing it. And so please make sure that you are actively sitting with what they said so that you can think about what is your role in your work. I want to just make sure everyone visits our website and our Facebook site for Ivy Black Girl. To your point, Dr. V, and like Shelley said, you can't quit me. So I got your email now, so I might send you a couple emails because we were awarded a grant and we are doing a strengths-based approach study for Black women and girls in Omaha about what we need, again, from a strengths-based lens for funders, stakeholders to really think about how do we reinvest and commit to Black. That mirrors the work of the grant makers for girls of color that now Dr. Monique Morris leads. And so we're excited for that. We know that it will be trailblazing and groundbreaking. That research doesn't exist here in this way. So please stay tuned and get engaged with this work. Think about how you show up as partners and allies in this work. If you are not a Black identifying woman, for all the Black identifying women, take care of yourselves, like give yourself grace, especially during this time. And again, we really appreciate your time and energy over this hour. So thank you, y'all be safe, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, Ash. Thanks, everyone.